Hello, and welcome to Living a Graceful Life. I'm your host, Denise Medved, and I'm also the creator and founder of the Ageless Grace Brain Health Program, which is in 50 US states and in 32 other countries. And the purpose of this show is to remind all of you that it's never too late to make the kinds of choices you make to live the life that you want to live. Happy about this guest that we have with us today from the UK, Jo Brizland Cullen. And she's not only a friend of mine, she's also an Ageless Grace educator and an Ageless Grace trainer. And she works with patients in the world of dementia. And so, Jo, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
Hi Denise. Hi everyone. I'm pleased to be here. We've just been having a lovely catch up because it's been 4 years since I've seen you face
Yes.
to face, and that's a long time. A lot of catching up.
And a lot has happened in that 4 years, right? We all know. So what I'd love to ask you to do is first tell people a little bit about your background, and then we're going to talk about your story and how you got interested in dementia. But tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, so originally I used to work in housing field, so supporting older people to live well. So that could be like after falls, mobility issues, things like that. And making sure that their well-being, they were well looked after as well, mentally as well as physically. And then from there, I always had a passion for fitness and became a fitness instructor and started working my way up to deal with people with more complex needs. So I worked with people who'd had strokes, I worked with heart patients and did cardiac rehabilitation. And then fell into another field where I was working with people who'd left hospital, so providing reablement and aftercare, and trying to coordinate. So all those experiences came together in a really rounded way. And then my dad got dementia, and that tipped everything upside down. And that's when I came to meet you. Trained as an educator in 2017 with the lovely Ali in Nottingham, and then came out to share my story with you in North Carolina, and you very kindly made me your honorary daughter. So you're now my American mama. And became a trainer back in 2018. And from there, I've just sort of used Ageless Grace in a variety of ways, which I'll go into in a little bit more detail in a bit. So that's me.
Thank you. That is you. And I would say that everything you've done in your life, much like what I say about myself, everything I've done in my life brought me to this place of being able to create Ageless Grace, and brought you to this place to be able to share it in the world, because we have so much background and experience. And Jo and I have a heart connection around her father and my mother, who also had Alzheimer's. And it's a challenge for people who watch someone they love disappear before their very eyes. It's a heartbreaking thing. And what I suspect is that everyone watching this show has someone in their lives, whether it's their own loved one, their own parent, their grandmother, their grandfather, their friend's father. They have someone in their lives who has been touched by some form of dementia. It's all over the world, and it is an ugly and horrible, challenging disease. But guess what? There are so many things that we can do to make their journey better. And that's exactly what Jo has done with her skills, all of her skills that have been brought together. So the title of this episode is My Dad, Dementia, Brain Health, and Me. And it's how I learned to feel the fear and do it anyway. And so, Jo, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about the vision that you have shared both at the Ageless Grace retreat and with me personally, about how to improve life for people living with dementia, and what's happened since you shared that story with so many people.
Okay, so when I came to meet you, Denise, my dad had already passed. So the story was that as a young girl, you know, a lot of us little girls were always daddy's girls. And even though my dad was quite strict and he was quite the disciplinarian, he was still like the person I looked up to. And so as time went on, we always used to go on holiday together. My mum and dad looked after my kids, their grandkids, and were amazing. You know, they played games. My dad was very fit. He ate healthily. He didn't smoke. He rarely drank. You know, he was very intelligent. He was an electrician, so he was working, using his brain all the time. Yet things started to change when he started getting lost. He would go places, he'd have the kids. He was taking my son to school and got lost just taking him to school. And finally, after sort of, we moved house, and my dad usually did all the repairs and everything for me. And he came to our house and he couldn't do the electrics. And it was like, and he was having difficulties at work. And as with anyone else, you know, we weren't brought up with a lot of technology. So you just put it down to, oh, you know, there's a lot going on. It's technology. It just takes a bit longer to learn. But it wasn't. And my mum obviously is, you know, put it down to, you know, he's getting older. We'd lost a few people in the family. You know, it's a bit of grief, you know, a bit disorientation. So when we finally persuaded my mum to go to the GP with him, the GP did what's called a mini memory test, which is not fit for purpose anymore, and said, oh, he's fine, come back in 6 months. So I rang the GP and I said, look, you know, this is not on. You can't leave somebody that is there's clearly something going on there, because this is not my dad. So it took us another 2 years to get a diagnosis, which is appalling. And so by this time, you know, my dad very quickly lost the power of speech. He lost the ability to write, and he also had aphasia, which meant he lost all facial expression. So from being a very fit man to being somebody who couldn't communicate with you, and somebody that was unable to, you know, his progression was very quick. So, you know, from diagnosis to my dad dying was under 3 years. So it was very, very quick. We had to fight all along the way. In the final year of his life, as my dad lost his ability to walk even, you know, everything, he needed help with everything, toileting, everything. That final year fighting to get somebody to come and talk to the family about end of life care, it didn't happen. Trying to get some nursing care for somebody who is unable to swallow because they were choking and the aspirating, so the food wasn't going down into his stomach, it was going onto his lungs, which meant that he started getting pneumonia, chest infections. All that in the UK was put down to social care needs. And it isn't a social care need. He had a disease, it was a brain disease, and that brain disease was taking his life away, and it was treated as though he had a mental health condition. And it isn't, it's a disease of the brain. The saddest part, though, for me, wasn't all the physical things that were going on. They were horrific enough. But the fact that because he could no longer communicate, his friends disappeared. So my mum and dad had lived in the same house, we were born there. And the fact that all the neighbours, bar one, who was amazing, and she came in and she would massage my dad's feet, and she was an amazing support for my mum, and they're really, really good friends. But everybody else, the people that my dad would go and chat to, the people who, if they had problems, my dad would go and help fix the problems because he was really handy. They shunned him because they didn't know how to deal with it. Society shuns people if they're different. And that really, really made me angry. It made me upset, but it made me angry too. That there was somebody here that more than anything needed compassion, needed people to talk to him, even if he couldn't communicate. Because in here, he was still the same person. He'd not changed, he was the same person. The thing that really got me as well is the fact that nobody gave us any time in terms of how can I, as a daughter, I wanted to be there for my dad. I wanted to communicate with my dad. I wanted to have that relationship. And my mum and dad were in love. She loved him more than anything in the world. Their relationship, they used to hold hands walking down the street, even as we were grown-ups and they were grandparents. They'd met when they were 13, and there'd never been anyone else for either of them. And to see my mum and my dad, that love they had for each other, the barriers that dementia brought, that was heartbreaking. And I vowed that, after my dad had passed away, and, regardless of all the horror, I can honestly say that my dad had a good death. And I was glad that we were there to hold his hand. He never went into care. My mum, to be honest, I thought we'd lose my mum before my dad, because of all the care that she gave him. Her life was all about my dad. And, he died a peaceful death. And that's the one thing that I take as a positive. And since then, so we lost my dad in 2012, and it's now 10 years this year. And in that time, I fought and fought and fought to try and get, opinions changed about dementia, to try and get some change in our community, and to try and get some change in society. And I'm not a big voice, I'm only a little person. But through my learning, and obviously that's what drove me to brain health, is I had all these skills and all this learning and all this experience, but I couldn't help my dad. So it was like, well, what can I do to help others? And that's where the journey began, with the lovely Ali in Nottingham, who trained me in brain health, and then having the opportunity to come over and spend 3 weeks with you in North Carolina and meet other people, share my story, and doing Ageless Grace and all those tools. I got it. It was like, oh my God, this is something that, supposing my dad had lived, if I'd have known this, could I have drawn him out? Could I have found my dad in that world? And I know that even though, like, my dad couldn't speak and everything, and we know all over the UK television is about the dementia choir and how music can bring that person alive. I know that using Ageless Grace, and I know because I've got case examples where I've worked with people, and I'll share that in a bit, that I know that it's not going to reach everybody. I don't think any one thing can. We're all unique individuals, and we all need our unique way of being and engaging with each other in this world. But I know that I could have found my dad, and I can't bring him back. But what I can do is share what I've learned in a positive way with other people, and hopefully help not just the person with dementia, but the carer as well, because they're not a carer. It might be a husband and wife, and they need to reconnect. And that's the power. So that's what you gave me. You gave me tools, and I use those tools in my way and in my world to try and help others. So thank you for that.
Your story is a powerful and touching story, and I hope everyone listening understands how important it is to to not only know about brain health, to share as much as you can with other people. Because like you said, your neighbors didn't know. All they knew was that they were afraid, that they were awkward, that they were clumsy with being able to deal with the fact that someone they had known was not the way they had known them. And I think what you have been doing with educating people, with working with people specifically with dementia and with their families is so critical to our world today, and so critical to the journey of being the person with dementia of some kind or another. We know there are many dementias, one famous one being Alzheimer's, one also being Parkinson's. I mean, there's so many different kinds, but to have an understanding and knowledge of that is so important. So Joe, the work that you're doing in the world is powerful. And I really encourage everyone, even if your job, your career, your life is not in the world of dementia, what you can do to be kind to someone who has someone in their life with dementia. Like how wonderful it would have been if someone had really supported your mom, or maybe a whole lot of someone's, right? How wonderful it would have been if someone had just come and sat with your dad so that he knew that his friends were still there for him. And that's the kind of thing that we can all do. We can all reach out. There's a woman I had on my show not long ago called Yvonne Heath, who was in hospice for many, many years, a hospice nurse. And she deals with grief and loss and loss of all kinds of things, as in, you lost your dad even though he was still alive.
Exactly.
Your mother lost her husband even though he was still alive. There's all kinds of grief besides actual loss of death. And so she was saying she started a movement, which you would love, called I Just Showed Up.
Yeah.
And she said most people don't know what to say, they don't know what to do, and so they avoid it. They block it out. But
Yeah.
she's saying if you just show up, just go to the door and say, I don't know what to say, but I'm here. Just sit beside someone and say, I don't know what to do, but I'm just gonna sit here with you. She told me a sweet story of a little girl. I don't know if it's true or not, it doesn't matter, but that the neighbor across the street passed away, and the husband, and the wife was still there. And the little girl went across the street, and the mother was thinking, I wonder what she's going to say to them. And she was gone for a long time, like an hour, hour and a half. And when she came back, she said, honey, what did you say to them? She said, oh, I didn't say anything. I just helped her cry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm getting teary myself. So that's I just showed up. And that's what I hope this show encourages people to do, that encourages them to just show up,
Yeah.
knock on a door, write a note, send a card, take a casserole, do something to be there. You have done so many things, and I just am so honored to know you because of all the work that you do in the world. And I know that you've had your own mental health struggles. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think so I'd always struggled with my mental health. I think even going back to when I was a child, and quite a lot of trauma I went through, sexual abuse and bullying, significant bullying, dogged my life for a long, long time. That sent me on a trajectory that probably wasn't a healthy trajectory because I didn't know who I was. And I think, ending up, obviously losing a best friend at 18, losing somebody that I loved at 26, and losing a lot of my grandparents. There was so much loss, and I didn't know how to deal with that either. Because I think in my generation, people never talked about any of these things. And so what you tend to do is just bury it and bury it and bury it. And it comes out in behavior with people. It can be drink, it can be drugs, it can be a lot of different things. It can be struggling to maintain relationships and struggling with so many things. And I would run away from a lot of things. But at the same time, I was also a mom. So I was a single parent. I had a child very, very young. So trying to look after a child, trying to work, trying to deal with my own mental health, you just push it all down and you just keep going and going and going. And I think, as I got older, obviously I had eating disorders, etc., and very, very poor body image, which I still battle with. But it came to a point that in 2017 that I was 5 minutes away from ending my life. And the only thing that stopped me was my dog, because it shows you what bad state I was in, is that the fact that it was in the car and I'd planned everything out and that was it. And it was only just looking at my dog and thinking, oh my God, I don't want to hurt the dog, that stopped me from ending it. Now I feel really sad because I think, oh my God, I valued the dog over my own life. It wasn't a nice place to go to, and it hasn't been. It's been a long recovery, and it still is painful, and there still are these bumps in the road, but that is life. And I just feel very blessed that actually when I started on the brain health journey, so when I started Ageless Grace, I was so low, and just doing little bits each day, where the biggest thing was connecting my body with my mind. So it wasn't about thinking, because the first counselling session I went to, they said, tell me about it. Well, I've never been able to talk about anything. So how do I know how to explain what's going on? Because I've never had to. I don't know how to. And I ended up with a counsellor saying, I can't work with you. And I was thinking, God, I must be really bad if a counsellor can't work with me. I've come to you for help and you're telling me you can't work with me. And so I did. I went into my Ageless Grace. I started that walking, being out in nature. They were the things, reading as much as I could, because obviously you started me on the brain that changed itself. And anything I could read about the brain. I read the Chimp Paradox. I started reading all these books thinking, okay, so this is where I am. I need to get all this rubbish out of my life. I don't know how to do it. But actually, I know that I'm feeling good when I'm doing these brain things. I know I'm feeling good when I start thinking and breathing. And then after I did the training with you, and for somebody that was scared of going anywhere on her own, I drove down to Gloucestershire and I had 3 weeks of a deep immersive yoga teacher training. I wasn't doing it to be a teacher. I wasn't looking to be a teacher. I did it because I wanted to try and learn how to live in my own body. And I came through that, and then I just fell into teaching classes. And then I also realized that actually I was going through menopause and all this was coming out. It's like, oh my God, are some of the deeper feelings, is that to do with my hormones? And am I on? There's so many things that I looked at and thought, gosh, I'm really screwy. And what is all these different things? And how can I work out what is actually going on? And I ended up doing some yoga trauma training. So that was about the way that I taught. I'm not one for following rules. I'm not one for following a book. I can't read instructions to save my life, because they don't resonate with me, and I'm always in trouble because I just go off on my own way of doing things. So the trauma yoga was so I did like 2 days, and that helped me to look at the world in a different way, and the way that I was trying to communicate with people, which helped me in my dementia world, because I always come from the point of where the other person is, but this just gave me a little bit deeper way of practice. So now I'm a year into finalising. It's an extra 100 hours teaching certificate. So this is a trauma yoga teacher qualification, which means that I can work with people who have gone through trauma like myself, that we're not talking about the trauma, we're playing it out through the body, through movement. And all that ties in with the Ageless Grace. And all that ties in with a lot of the work that I've been doing. So I've been working with, so I did an 8-week carer program, and that was all Ageless Grace, and a lot of that bringing in some of the yoga. So when we were doing like the Tai Chi, when we were doing breathing and calming our breath and using that gentle movement, and when I was doing like one-to-ones. So during COVID, I was doing one-to-ones in people's houses, and I had a gentleman living with dementia, and his name was Fred. That might not be his real name. And basically, he had a stroke. He had dementia as a result of that stroke. And he needed to do physical exercise. So he had physical therapy exercises to do, but he was in the flat. He was reluctant to do them at first. He was getting agitated. He wouldn't go out the flat. And his sister asked, could I go and do some Ageless Grace? Could I do some brain health work with him? And so I agreed we'd go for 6 weeks, because the idea is for me to empower people to go on. It's not for me to keep teaching. It's enabling, empowering people. It's not about turning up to a class and doing a class week in, week out. It's about giving people tools that can then give them a way of moving forward in their lives, like it's helped me to move forward. Don't know where I'm going, got ideas, and I don't know what that path looks like because I can't do it on paper, but I know I'm getting there. And that's what I want for other people, is you're okay where you are now. It's where you're meant to be, and you will get there. You just need to listen to the body, and the body will start to help drive the mind. So this guy, going back to this guy, so he used to be a plumber, and he also used to play football, and he loved loads of music that I like Beatles, Queen, etc., etc. And so basically, it's once I knew a little bit about him, once I knew his life story, then we would put the music on, and I would sit opposite him, and I knew the areas of his body he needed to move because of the physio. So he needed to get his feet moving, he needed to get his arms and his legs moving. But doing something like moving your arm up and down, just no, not going to go there, not going to work. So this one morning I sat opposite him and I said, right, Fred, you used to be a plumber, you know what we're going to do today? Put the music on. We're going to rip out a bathroom. So we're there unscrewing, we're unscrewing the taps and lifting them out. And I asked that because I don't know all the tools. I'm like, what's this I'm using? He's like, oh, you need a spanner. So he's moving his spanner. And then we're lifting this bath up, and I went, right. I said, it's so heavy. Let's get carrying it downstairs. And he's like that. He looks at me and he went, no, you carry it downstairs. You're the apprentice. I'm the leader. It's like, and his sister each week, she would see like this engagement, and she would see the movement, and I wanted to measure it because I wanted to see what that impact was. But the difficulty is when you're working with people with dementia, and everybody, if you're going for funding, they're like, oh, you've got to use a measurement tool. A person with dementia can't measure, you know. It's all right asking somebody about the well-being. I find it hard to tell you what my well-being is. But what you can see is you can see if somebody's moving better, you can see if they're happy, and you can see by asking the family, has there been any change? And this guy, from week 1, he wouldn't go out. His sister every week when she went to visit him, and she'd join in as well. She sat on the chair, she joined in, and she found it amazing. She said, I just can't believe the difference. And so at the end of the first session, as I was going, she messaged me later, and she said to me, she says, every week when I go, I ask him, will he come out for lunch? And every week he says no. He said, after you'd been, I asked him, as usual, will he come out for lunch? And he said yes. She said, and he was like, his mood just stayed up all day. She says, and I noticed that he was walking better. And that was just by using natural body movements wasn't enforcing anything, because what it was doing was giving his body the freedom to move as it wanted to move, rather than verbally trying to send those messages, which in dementia are blocked. So, and I just found like using, so I also did a 7-week program with carers, and they were carers for people, for adults with learning difficulties. And they're 24-hour-a-day carers, and they've had that responsibility from birth, and they're going to have that responsibility until death. And that is the most hardest job role, I think. They blew me away, these carers. And each week, like, we'd do some tools, we'd have fun, we'd measure, like at the beginning of the class, I'd ask them to fill in a form as to how they felt, you know, mentally, physically, what had been going on. And at the end of the class, how they felt. And then in the final week, we invited all the family, everybody come in, and we had a big party, and we had brownies and everything. And the difference, so a lot of them, they had small windows of time that they could do something, because the first week there was a lot of negativity. It was like, how am I going to exercise? I don't have time. I'm a carer 24 hours a day. And it was around, hang on a minute, what about when you're watching telly? What about when you're in bed? And the difference, so I evaluate that. So I did a report on that. And the organisation that paid me to do it, they were like, oh my God, you know, this is really, really good stuff. So you could see that people were thinking in different ways. So they would use some of the tools stuck in traffic. They would use some of the tools when they were lying in bed. They would use some of the tools when they were putting the kettle on in the morning, because they knew how they could use it. And they used to have, so once a month, all the carers with the adult kids that they cared for, they would go to a disco that was, you know, sort of specially catered for them. And they started using the tools in this family disco. So like more of the carers started joining in as well. So it was just like, wow, this is amazing. Oh, excuse me. And that's what it's about. It's, you know, it's about empowering people to think in a different way about how they can use their body. It's not exercise, it's life change. And and that's what, it just, you know, like at the moment, so I went out to Switzerland and spoke there at a neuroscience congress, and that was quite early on in my journey, but they got it. There was like doctors from Austria, there was doctors from Africa, there was doctors from India, and they all got it. I had them all doing Ageless Grace, which was amazing, because they're qualified doctors, and I'm just little old me. I've not got a degree, but you know, and it was just unreal. And we took so the organisation I work for, the charity I work for, is called Together Dementia Support in Manchester. And we're one of the only charities in Manchester providing direct support to people living with dementia and carers. And we're not commissioned. So in the UK, you get commissioned to deliver services. So you get money so you can carry on delivering it. And we're not a commissioned service. And our CEO, Sally Ferris, I met her when my dad had dementia. We were managers working for the same organisation. She worked in dementia and I worked in aftercare, and she taught me so much, and I worked for her, and she set up this charity because there was this gap. So we have a lot of different cultural differences as well, and all these communities, you know, they don't talk about dementia. Dementia isn't spoken about. And the engagement, how you can engage people into doing exercise, because the patterns and things are so different. Sally set up this charity that when I started 4 years ago, there was 3 paid staff, and I was one of them. There's now 11. And that's without being commissioned. I tell you, she is this amazing woman that invests her heart and soul into things. And my manager, she looked after my dad at a group my dad used to go to. And, you know, I work with a team of people that have the passion and drive, and the volunteers we have. Just to give you an example, on Wednesday, we took 91 people, so people living with dementia and their carers, to Blackpool. I started a new job because I ended up being the coach entertainer, running up and down the coach, doing Ageless Grace, singing, dancing. And you know what? It was like, you know, it was like to see people who don't get opportunities to go out, and to know that all these people that work for this organisation and all these volunteers that gave, one of the volunteers gave 10 hours time, you know, free, to help other people. And I just think, you know, sometimes we have a lot of politics in the UK at the moment, and I won't even go there about prime ministers, let's not go there, or about funding, or about bad financial decisions. But when you see these people that have got lifelong diseases of the brain, and when you see the carers whose health is deteriorating because they can't get any breaks, when we know that we can bring fun, we can bring engagement and love and a listening ear, as well as knowledge and advocacy to help fight, then I know that all these things that come together in this big ball of life that I'm doing, I know we're doing the right thing. And, you know, I think Ageless Grace started me on that path. And it isn't just exercise, because look at how my life has evolved. That was the start, that was the catalyst for change for me. And I have changed. And, you know, it is hard. It is hard banging your head on doors, because a lot of people don't want to listen. But you know what? The fact that you knew all this stuff and you started this program in 2011, before anybody had even heard about neuroplasticity, before anybody had even thought about brain health. And I just feel so privileged that I get it. And I feel so privileged that I'm able to let others see, hear, and get it. And it might not be massive game changers, it might not be the top of the pile, but I know each life that we're supporting through our dementia charity, through Ageless Grace, through my yoga, through all these connections I've made, and making a positive difference in those lives that really need it. And that's power, not about being rich, not about being able to go out there and say, I'm this, I'm that, and the other. We're the people who, by the little things that we do, are making this world a better place. So thank you, Denise. Thank you, Ella. Thank you, Sally and Claire. And thank you to everybody that really, really, my family most of all, and my mum and dad, who put me on this earth and have given me the chance to make a difference. There you go.
You, I think I've been teary through this entire conversation that we're having, because you are so powerful with what you are doing in the world, and the way in which you're doing it, the way in which you're expressing it and sharing your story with others, about your dad, about yourself, about your journey, about people like Fred. Those are so powerful and so meaningful. And you're right. All it takes is greater awareness, as simple as we mentioned earlier, maybe on a personal basis, just showing up for somebody who is the carer of someone who's going through a form of dementia, or any brain or health issue. There are so many kinds. Or being kind to someone, or but what you just mentioned last about your volunteers is just remarkable, that so many people understand. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, Joe, that everyone listening to this and watching this knows someone
Yeah.
maybe several someone's, either in their immediate life, their immediate family, or in the lives of their friends and their neighbors who is going through a mental health struggle, a brain health struggle, a
Yeah.
form of dementia. And and like you say, it's just not easy to know what to do.
Mm.
It's not easy to know how to address it, but it's so simple to volunteer an hour of your time or
Yeah.
10 hours
Yeah.
of your time to do something like that. Tell me again the name of the organization you work for, because I'm hoping that people in the UK, especially who hear about this, might be willing to volunteer some time. And I don't know if there's a way for people to make donations to your organization or not, but tell us about that.
Yeah. So our charity is called Together Dementia Support. We have a website and we have a Just Giving page for anybody who wants to donate. If you're living in the Manchester or Trafford area, we really need volunteers to help us reach out to more people. We've had to close our waiting list for a little bit because we've got that many people needing our support that, we need to make sure that we're able to support those we've already got. So we desperately need volunteers. We're doing a program, and I'm working on a program called Together at Home. And this was a passion of mine because that takes me back to the very start of the journey with my dad and mum being stuck at home and needing somebody to go in and do things with them and share time with them and give them things like Ageless Grace to do. And we're doing that project, but we need volunteers desperately. We've got so many families out there that, you'd spend the afternoon crying if I shared some of the stories that we're hearing day in, day out. We're crying out for support. They are, and the health and social care system is just broken. It shouldn't, like you say, it shouldn't need people like us, but it does. And while we can do, but we need everybody's help. So if you want to donate to us, just go onto our website and look at all the amazing things that all our staff, all our volunteers do. It's Together Dementia Support in Manchester. And if anybody's interested in doing Ageless Grace training or wants to know about the trauma yoga I'm doing, then you can email me on agelessjbc@gmail.com. And obviously Denise, on the website, on the Ageless Grace website, there's loads of trainers all over the world. So, please get in touch with any of us. We're here to help spread that word. And, for Denise to get it across 32 countries is some feat in itself. So I'm surrounded by powerful people who are all making their little way around the world and making a difference. I truly believe that we can change through kindness.
Oh, I think we can change through kindness too. There is a thread, and you are the shining example of that more than most people I know. There's a thread of compassion and kindness and love that threads through all the people that are attracted to work with Ageless Grace, to work with people who have dementia or other kinds of cognitive decline or brain health issues and challenges. And that compassion and care and kindness is what I think the whole being here on this planet is all about. And we just have directed it at an area in the world that especially needs attention. As you said, not only the people with cognitive decline of any kind or brain health challenges, but the people who care for them, the people who love them. They're all of those people. And interestingly enough, it's massive, sadly enough. And those of us again who are touched by it in some way or another, our best friend's mother, our neighbor across the street, whoever it might be, all of those touches almost everyone in the world in some way or another. So what you are doing, Joe, is powerful. Again, would you mind to just spell out for people the name of the website, and can they go on the website and make a donation if they are interested?
Yes, they can. So it's www dot, all one word, together, dementia support .org or .com. It's one of the others. But you'll find it if you just put in together dementia support, and it's all one word. There's a Just Giving page, there's a donation page, there's lots of opportunities to support us. So have a look at some of the fun things that we get up to. And if anybody's interested in Ageless Grace or wants to know more about the work that I've been doing and all the other little bits that I've been doing, just send me an email. It's agelessjbc@gmail.com, all lowercase. And I've got some Ageless Grace online training coming up in November. So if you're interested, get in touch.
And when there's an online training, I mean, as long as that works out with your personal time zone for you, you can attend from anywhere. You don't have to be in Manchester or the UK. You can take Joe's training to learn more about brain health. Some people do it just as a personal thing to learn more about brain health, or because they have someone in their life that they would like to work with. And some people do it to do like Joe has done, and to actually teach Ageless Grace and offer trainings or programs or classes so that you can actually make a difference in people's lives on a daily basis. It's pretty powerful. For every story of Fred, there are many, many more stories like that of people that have responded and have had huge positive impacts in their lives and in the way that they are living this journey that no one should have to live, but it's something that happens in our world today. And so when you're on the cognitive decline journey, to have someone like Joe in your life is powerful. So I encourage everyone who's listening to think of all these things we've suggested. You can be a volunteer for 1 hour. You can just show up for your neighbor. You can just show up for someone who is the caregiver of another person, the carer for that person, or who needs a break. I mean, how wonderful to be able to give someone a break for an hour and say, I'll come and stay with your husband or your wife or your son while you go out and take a walk. And you may not know what to say, or you may not know what to do, but you can just be there. That's an important thing.
Well, all of our volunteers, we do a lot of training with them. So all of our volunteers, before they go into someone's house, then we obviously give them support, and we give them things that they're able to do and teach them how to communicate and how they can engage somebody, because that's important. Because going into somebody's home with somebody who's quite impaired is quite an intimate thing. So we don't do personal care, but obviously you've got to have a relationship. So with the Together at Home that we do is we go and see what's going on in the family, see what types of things they want to get involved in and want to do, because there's different levels of impairment with dementia. So we have some people that are still really young. I've got people that are like in the 40s, and they're very physically fit, but they just can't navigate getting on a bus or get into places because they can't sequence things. But they're really good company and they've still got a lot to share. So once you know that and you're out with somebody, they can live really, really well. And that's what we want people to enjoy life. Dementia shouldn't be like it, like my dad's was a very rapid decline and his is extreme. I've got people, we have another group that's called Fabulous Forgetful Friends. And we have a group of people living with dementia who go out and talk to people about what it's like to live with dementia. And one of them who, she's amazing. She's had dementia for 10 years. And one of the other guys, he's had it for 11 years. And he's more computer literate than I am. And we've just developed a training tool to train leisure centres to see that people with dementia, you might not know somebody's got with dementia, because in a lot of cases, it's an invisible illness. So physically, they might still be really, really fit. And, they're still, like you can be talking to somebody and not realize until as the conversation goes on, or there might be little things, or even the communication might be fine, but they might have trouble because it can impact on your vision. So they might have trouble sort of working out where things are in a room. There's so many things that connect to dementia. People often see, and it's not a negative, but a lot of charities, like the big charities, the big dementia charities, they used to just focus on memory. You forgot your keys or forgot that. But a lot of people with dementia, that isn't the early signs. The early signs are like being able, being lost and disorientated, or using money to pay for things, forgetting PIN numbers. And, it can be quite subtle changes. And so what we know is that by using brain health, we're trying to fire up different parts of the brain, which means we keep that cognitive reserve. So a lot of people can still live really well with dementia, providing they get that cognitive stimulation. And that's one of the things that a lot of people lost in lockdown. And that's why there was such a heavy decline with people with cognitive issues, because they didn't have that stimulation anymore. Oh, sorry, that's my dog barking. I'll mute myself.
That's okay. That's okay. Well, one of the things that I'd also like to say to everyone, first to your point about lockdown, is that in fact, we've learned through neuroscientists' discoveries and research that the primary purpose, there he is, the primary purpose of the brain is to control movement of the body. So when we don't have that movement, the brain also declines, not just the physical body, but the brain is declining without that movement. And so, of course, that then relates to this lockdown of the last, 2 to 3 years, depending on where you've lived and where you are in the world. But this lockdown has caused people to stay inside, to be sedentary, to sit, to not be stimulated. And we have learned, again, through neuroscientists and research, that doing word games and puzzles and crosswords do not delay cognitive decline. The best exercise for the brain is physical exercise of some kind or another. And the best kind, as you know, Joe, and I know, is something that makes you think about it. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be difficult, but it's something that's causing you to think. So some of the tools we do, for example, in Ageless Grace, where we draw a circle with one hand and a triangle with the other foot, or we tap and keep time to the music, and then we clap on a certain number as we count. Those kinds of things are silly and playful, almost childlike, and yet they are very, very important to the physical movement and the brain being connected at the same time. Like you say, living through your body, being connected to your body and understanding it. It makes all the difference in the world. And I love that you took your puppy to visit people, your clients and patients during COVID, because they got to have some cuddles, because again, that tactile, it's
cuddles, don't we?
it's very important to have all that. So the other thing I'd like to say, based on what you've said and inspired me about, is that some of you may go to the website of Together Dementia Support.com, or you may have some organization in your own city, wherever you are in the world, and you're listening to this or watching this, wherever you are, I bet there is some sort of dementia support program that's going on. Do you live in Canada? Do you live in South Africa? Do you live in Europe? Do you live in Iowa or Pennsylvania? There are so many organizations that need our help. One of the biggest and most well-known is the Alzheimer's Association, but there's also the Parkinson's Foundation, and there's also the Parkinson's Institute, and there are so many dementia connections programs. We have just started working with a company called the Dementia Connection, Dr. Jennifer Stelcher and Jessica Ryan, and they do a 6-hour certification that can certify you as a dementia connection specialist. And that's another important thing. It's a simple, very affordable program. It takes 6 hours. And to get that knowledge and understanding is a powerful tool that you can then use either with a loved one, with someone in your family, with a friend or a neighbor, or as a volunteer in a program. Suddenly you have a skill set about the dementia connection, or in the training with Ageless Grace. You can take a seminar for 4 hours, or you can be certified to teach the program in 14 hours. Pretty quick to be able to make a huge impact on the world. And if you go to agelessgrace.com and you look for trainings, then there's a schedule. And for example, you will find it's Joe Brizland Cullen. And Joe Brizland Cullen, that's the JBC, agelessjbc at gmail.com. That is where you would find her trainings. And there's also a bio on there and a background. And as she said, there are other trainers all around the world that might be offering a program that's in your time zone or at a convenient date or time. And some of them are even spread out where you don't have 7 hours one day and 7 the next, but maybe you have 3 or 4 hours one day, and then the next week, 3 or 4 hours, and they're spread apart so that it can also fit your schedule. And the Dementia Connection, which I hope many of you will go and see. And when they ask you where you heard about it, say Ageless Grace, so they know and they can track that we're supporting what they do. And then there are other programs throughout the world. There's a company called Ageucate, 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 that offers programs in what you were just talking about, Joe, understanding dementia. They put you through a virtual dementia training. I went through it myself, where you put on, goggles and you put gloves on your hand, and you're assigned simple tasks to do. And like you say, it's not always the memory. It can very often be, this was overwhelmingly enlightening to me, that they asked me to do a simple thing like pick up some certain objects and put it in a bag with this mat, with this thing over my eyes, and with gloves on my hands, and with a little sound stimulator, because you hear little noises and everything gets more personified. And I couldn't do it. And I was so frustrated. And I have a very healthy brain and I'm a healthy person. So I was thinking, I cannot even imagine how it must be to be the person with dementia. And as you said, you can live very well as long as someone knows that you have dementia and recognizes it, honors it. And there are so many programs and activities that people can do that can really help them have a quality of life. So I just want to say that I literally bow, getting teary, bow to you, Joe, for the work that you're doing in the world, and what you've done with the tools of Ageless Grace and trauma yoga, and the different things that you have that can help people have a better quality of life in the world. I'm honored to not only know you, but I'm very honored that you are an Ageless Grace educator and an Ageless Grace trainer, and that you're making such a positive difference in the world. It's making me cry.
Oh, don't you start me.
So again, I just want to say to everyone that the whole purpose of this show, called Living a Graceful Life, is that to remind you that it's never too late to begin making choices to create the life you want to live. And I don't know about you, but almost every person I've ever come in contact wants to do good in the world. They want to do something that makes a difference. They want to be helpful, compassionate, and kind. And so the ideas that Joe has given you today of being a volunteer, of just showing up, as Yvonne Heath says to us, and Those types of things are so important to your own quality of life. We know that when we give a gift of service to someone, it always comes back. It always comes back and nurtures and supports us. So thank you, Joe, for your inspiring story. Thank you so much for giving your time to us to do this show, and many blessings to you and all the work that you're doing in the world. We appreciate you so very much.
Oh, thank you for having me and for a catch up. It's been beautiful. Thank you.
It has. Thank you all.